Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Stacy and I am your go-to realtor for everything here, South Florida. So today we are going to dig in again to the NAR settlement and cover all the questions and somewhat confusing different things that have come up this week, as we are now just about 1 week into all of our new changes. Today's episode, we're going to really focus on the listing agreement because, in all honesty, that's really where everything starts. So if you are a seller, this episode is really for you, and I urge you to really listen, pay attention, take notes, leave your questions in the comments, and let's get right to it. So the main changes are what we're going to cover, and some of the biggest changes, like I mentioned in my previous episode, has to do with the fact that now compensation to a cooperating broker is not going to be advertised or marketed in the MLS any further. However, the first thing that a seller could do if they want to incentivize a buyer's agent to sell their home is offer what's called seller concessions. And seller concessions is going to be different from compensating a buyer's agent in what was formerly known as commission, as this cannot be a percentage. This has to be a dollar amount, and it will be given from the seller directly to the buyer at the closing table. So now online, I'm bringing it up on my computer here so I can tell you exactly where it is. On line 39C of the new Florida listing agreement, should the seller want to advertise in the MLS an incentive to the buyer, that dollar amount can be added to the listing agreement on line 39C. Now, again, this shouldn't be confused with commission, but if the buyer wants to use this incentive to help pay their agent, they are absolutely entitled to do so. So that's the first change that I want you to be aware of. That's something that a seller can do to incentivize buyers agents to bring their buyers to see their house. It is definitely not required, and the amount is, of course, fully negotiable. Moving on now to line 109, section 8, compensation. On line 112A, it's going to ask for the listing agent to discuss with their seller the percentage that the listing agent would be collecting directly from their seller. So in the old days, prior to August 17th, it used to be the total commission that would be shared between both brokerages, listing agent, buyer's agent. So let's just say it was 6%. 3% of that would go to the listing agent, and a few lines down, you would see where the other 3% was being shared with the buyer's agent. Now, those days are behind us. Kind of. So let's just say again, on line 112A, you want to pay just the listing agent 3%. It should only reflect 3%. Then when you scroll down to paragraph 10, compensation to buyer broker, is where you can decide if you want your agent to compensate a buyer's agent, or if you as the seller want to directly compensate a buyer's agent, or if you simply choose that that is not something you are willing to do, you do not want to offer buyer agent compensation, and that is completely your prerogative. So if you were to choose box 146A, this would mean you are authorizing your agent to offer a portion of the total commission to the buyer's broker. So if you were to go back up to line 112 in paragraph 8, that number should reflect a total. Let's say it is 6%. If you put 6% on line 112, you can still offer a buyer broker commission of 3%, and you would instruct your agent to do so by checking box A on line 146 and saying you can give of your 6%, you can give 3% of that to a buyer's agent. Now, keep in mind that 3% is not going to be advertised on the MLS. It can't be. It's against the law now. But it can be advertised by other means through the listing agent's social media pages, their website, phone calls, text messages, direct email or mail marketing, signage outside of the property. It just cannot be on the MLS or any IDX feed that feeds from the MLS, such as Zillow, Realtor.com, places like that. This is essentially doing it the old-fashioned way, where it was broker to broker compensation. The only change here would be it cannot be marketed on the MLS. Another option a seller can do is they can choose line 150, box B. That means that you are going to offer to the buyer's broker compensation, a compensation of your choice, directly from yourself. It's not broker to broker. So that would bring us back up. Let's refer back up to line 112A. Then it should say you are paying 3% or whatever amount you negotiate with your listing agent. You're paying them 3%, and then you can come down to the buyer broker commission and you can say you will also give a buyer broker 3%, 2.5%, 2%, whatever you deem fit, whatever amount you would like your agent to market to other agents to bring you a ready, willing, and able buyer. Do keep in mind, you're going to hear me say this a lot, commissions are not set by law and they are fully negotiable. So you can offer whatever amount you want. Again, it will not be offered in the MLS. The only thing we can now offer in MLS is incentives, and it must be a dollar amount, not a percentage. But again, the agent can advertise that, yes, if an agent calls me on one of my listings, they ask me, is your seller paying buyer broker compensation? I can say, yes, they sure are. They're offering you 2.5% or 2% or 3%, whatever my seller told me they feel comfortable doing and what we put in the listing agreement. Finally, there is one other option, and that option is going to be 153, box C. No compensation will be offered to a buyer's broker. We're hearing really mixed feedback and reviews and feelings on checking off this box. This box is entirely at the discretion of the seller. Now, just because this box may get checked by some sellers does not mean that a seller is still not able to negotiate a compensation through the offer with a buyer and their agent. It just means they are not instructing their agent to proactively advertise a percentage. They want to keep it more open for negotiation. You give me an offer, send me a compensation form requesting your 2.5%. It will be at the seller's discretion if they choose to accept that and pay that in an effort to accept that offer. You can also still put in an offer from a buyer, a concession request, and it is up to the seller if they want to choose it. Choosing box 153C does not mean that a seller is not going to offer buyer agent compensation or incentives. It's just leaving it up for negotiation at the time an offer is brought. I hope that makes sense. So you essentially, just circling back around, as a seller, you now have 3 options on how you want to handle compensation to a buyer's agent. 1, you can do it the old-fashioned way, broker to broker. I'm going to offer a 6% commission. 3% of that will be used to pay the listing agent. The broker is then going to share the other 3% with a buyer's agent. Option B, you're going to pay 3% to your agent. You're going to pay 2.5%, 2%. Again, fully negotiable with your agent. That is between the seller and the listing agent. And then you really want to sell your house. You want to incentivize buyers' agents to bring their buyers to your home and make an offer on your property. You may want to offer them 2-3%, whatever. You may want to offer them a flat fee. Completely up to you. It's an incentive. And finally, you can just say, we're going to leave this up to interpretation. I'm going to leave this up to seeing how the offers come in. I don't want to proactively offer anything. I want you to make an offer on my house. If you want to make a compensation part of the negotiations, bring me the offer. Let's see what we can do. It just can't be proactively marketed. The listing agent can't say, yes, they're offering 2%, because we don't know. It's really depends on the offer that you bring. Now, when you make these offers, it's really important, if you're a buyer's agent, that you then submit a compensation agreement at the time of the offer to protect your compensation. Now, come on, guys, no one works for free. And I know realtors can sometimes get a bad rep. People think they make too much money. They don't even understand how splits or anything like that works. But no one works for free, and nor should they. I don't think that a lot of people would expect anyone to work for free. But now buyers agents no longer have the protection from the MLS to see what the compensation is that they are going to earn. So it is vitally important that you submit with the offer either a compensation agreement from broker to broker. The listing broker is going to sign it saying, yes, we're going to take 2% of our commission and we're going to pay it to the buyer's brokerage. Or you're going to get a compensation agreement directly signed by the seller of the home saying, yes, Mr. Buyer, you brought me a good offer. I'm going to pay you 2.5% at closing. Or you just submit the offer. You don't know what it's for. You're going to ask for what it is you're looking for. And the seller will make that decision if they want to compensate or if they want to counter and just leave it up fully for negotiation. Without those compensation agreements, buyer broker compensation is not protected unless you have the concessions written into the contract in a dollar amount that the seller is crediting the buyer a dollar amount, for simple math, let's call it $5,000, towards the buyer's closing costs and prepaids. Then how the buyer gets paid is through the buyer brokerage agreement that they have with their buyer stating what they must earn to complete this transaction. We're going to definitely cover the buyer brokerage agreements in another episode. We're going to dive deep into those because those have definitely changed and there's a lot we need to know about that. As a buyer, you definitely know what you're getting yourself into when signing these. This episode is just to really review the listing agreement and the different ways that the seller can go about marketing their home for sale. A lot of sellers may choose to try to go this on their own, not worry about the listing agreement, try to do this as a FSBO. I would encourage you to think that over carefully. I always say, I'm not a CPA. I don't file my own taxes. I don't cut my own hair. There's a professional for everything and there's a reason for that. Trying to go this alone can get anyone into a lot of trouble. Selling a home is just half the battle. There are a lot of things that can come up throughout a transaction having to do with inspections, having to do with appraisal issues, having to do with things coming up in title, having to do with things coming up in finance that has a lot of involvement of an agent to successfully renegotiate things at the table to ultimately get you to the closing table. So I would encourage you to seek out and negotiate with your agents whatever you need to negotiate to have the proper representation in moving forward. If you liked this episode, I hope you will please subscribe to my channel and I look forward to talking about the next part of this next time.